Jake Miller stood outside the abandoned workshop and wiped sweat from his forehead. The heat on Kepler 442b was always brutal during the day, but something about this place made him feel even more uncomfortable. The building looked normal enough. From the outside, gray metal walls and a standard airlock door like any other repair facility on the frontier worlds. The elderly Zephyrian who sold him the place had been strange, though Veltar kept looking over his shoulder and speaking in whispers. During their meeting he sold the workshop for almost nothing, which should have been Jake's first warning. Something this size and this well-equipped should have cost 10 times what he paid Jake. Activated his personal scanner and checked the air quality inside the building. Everything looked safe. The previous owner had left the life support systems running, which was odd. Most people shut everything down when they abandoned a place to save on power costs. The main door responded to his new access codes and slid open with a soft hiss. Jake stepped inside and immediately knew this was no ordinary repair shop. The main floor was huge, with workstations arranged in a circle around a central area. Strange alien tools hung from the walls, and several pieces of equipment hummed quietly in the dim lighting. Most of the machinery was Zephyrian design, but Jake spotted some Cytherian tech mixed in that was unusual. The two species rarely worked together on anything. Their governments had been in a Cold War for decades. Jake made his living fixing and selling salvaged alien technology, so he knew the different styles well. He walked deeper into the workshop and found something that made him stop. The central area contained what looked like medical equipment, very advanced medical equipment, with restraints and monitoring devices attached. Jake had seen similar setups in hospitals, but this looked more like something from a research facility. 3 large containers sat against the far wall. They were the right size to hold a person and had viewing windows on the front. Jake approached them carefully and peered inside. All 3 were empty, but showed signs of recent use. The interiors had been cleaned, but he could still see scratch marks on the walls. A computer terminal near the containers was still active. Jake touched the screen, and it lit up with alien text. He pulled out his translation device and pointed it at the display. The words that appeared made his blood run cold. Project Harmony Data Archive, Human Behavioral Analysis, Subject Status Terminated. Jake stepped back from the terminal. His hands were shaking slightly. Humans were not supposed to be on this planet officially. The nearest human colony was 3 systems away, and this facility was supposed to be abandoned for over a year. He forced himself to stay calm and continue exploring. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe the computer was displaying old data from somewhere else. Maybe the translation was wrong. His device sometimes made mistakes with technical terms. The workshop had 2 other levels. Jake found stairs leading down to a basement area. The lower level was even stranger than the main floor. It contained more medical equipment and what looked like observation rooms, small chambers with one-way glass. Windows lined one wall. Each room had been furnished like a basic living space, with a bed, desk, and small bathroom. Jake counted 12 rooms total, but only 3 showed signs of recent occupation. The beds in those rooms had been stripped, and the personal belongings removed, but he could still tell someone had lived there. The walls in one room had scratch marks near the bed, as if someone had been counting days. At the end of the hallway he found an office. The door was locked, but his new access codes worked here too. Inside was a desk, covered with data tablets and what looked like research notes. Most of the text was in Cytherian, which his translator handled better than Zephyrianth. Notes mentioned something called behavioral modification protocols and stress response testing. Jake photographed several pages with his scanner, but the technical language was difficult to understand. Even with translation help, one tablet showed video files. Jake hesitated before opening the first one. The screen flickered and showed the interior of the workshop, but it looked different. The lighting was brighter, and the medical equipment was arranged differently. Through human women sat in chairs in the central area. They looked tired and scared, but alert. The camera angle made it clear they were being observed without their knowledge. Jake recognized the type of hidden recording system from his military days. Women appeared to be in their 20s or 30s. All 3 looked healthy, despite their obvious stress. One had short brown hair and wore what looked like a military uniform. Another had long blonde hair and civilian clothes. The third was a redhead in a pilot's jumpsuit. Jake paused the video and studied their faces. These were real people, not actors or simulations. The fear in their eyes was genuine. Someone had brought human beings to this place and held them here. The medical equipment suddenly made horrible sense. He scrolled through more video files. There were dozens of them spanning several months. The timestamps showed the recordings were made over a year ago, which matched when Veltar claimed to have abandoned the facility Jake selected. Another file at random. This one showed the same 3 women, but they looked different. Now less scared and more determined. They were talking quietly among themselves, and one was sketching something on a piece of paper. The audio was too low to hear their words. Clearly more files showed the women in different situations. Sometimes they were alone in the small rooms downstairs. Other times they were in what looked like testing scenarios. The aliens running these tests stayed off camera, but Jake could hear their voices, giving instructions. The whole situation made Jake sick to his stomach, but he forced himself to keep watching. Someone needed to know what had happened here. These women deserved to have their story told. As he went through more files, Jake began to notice something. The women were not just surviving their captivity, they were adapting and planning. The one in the military uniform seemed to be studying the facility layout. The doctor was taking notes about their captors. The pilot was watching guard routines and timing. Jake found himself feeling proud of these strangers. They were showing the kind of courage and determination that made humans respected throughout the galaxy. Even in this horrible situation, they refused to give up. The last video file in the folder was different. It showed the workshop and chaos alarms were blaring, and emergency lights flashed red. The 3 women were gone, and several pieces of equipment had been damaged. Whoever was operating the camera was running through the facility, searching for something. The recording ended abruptly. Jake sat back in the chair and tried to process what he had seen. A secret research facility. Human test subjects who had somehow escaped the previous owner, fleeing and selling the place for almost nothing. Jake realized he was in way over his head. This was not just an abandoned workshop. This was a crime scene, and possibly evidence of something much larger. He needed to contact the authorities. But first he wanted to understand more about what had happened. Here the computer system might have more information. Jake spent the next hour learning how to navigate the alien interface. He found references to other facilities, and what looked like a larger research program involving multiple species. As the day grew late, Jake finally admitted he needed help. This was too big for one person to handle. He would contact the Human Colonial Authority in the morning, and turn over everything he had found. But first he wanted to know if those 3 women had made it to safety. The video files showed them escaping, but not where they went. Jake hoped they were somewhere safe, telling their story to people who could do something about it. As he prepared to leave for the day, Jake took one last look around the workshop. He thought about the courage those women had shown, and felt ashamed of his own fears. He was just looking at recordings of what they had lived through. Tomorrow, he would make sure the right people knew about this place. Tonight, he would research everything he could about human disappearances in this sector. Someone needed to pay for what had happened here, and Jake was going to make sure they did. Jake returned to the workshop early the next morning with better translation software and a portable power unit. He had barely slept thinking about what he had discovered. The faces of those 3 women haunted his dreams, and he was determined to learn their fate. The new translation program was military-grade equipment. Jake had bought it years ago, when he started his salvage business. It could handle most alien languages, including the complex technical terms used in scientific research. Jake connected his equipment to the workshop's main computer and began downloading everything. The files were massive, containing months of detailed observations and test results. As the translation software worked, Jake started reading the decoded text. The research project was called Project Harmony, and it was led by a Cytherian scientist named Dr. Cathilla. According to her notes, the goal was to study what she called the human factor in survival situations. The Cytherian government wanted to understand Why humans were so successful at colonizing hostile worlds. Dr. Catilla had been granted permission to acquire human subjects for study. The official records claimed the humans were volunteers, but Jake found shipping manifests that told a different story. The 3 women had been taken from a damaged colony ship that had requested emergency assistance. Their names were Amy Walsh, Lisa Brown, and Kate Turner. Amy was listed as a military engineer with combat experience. Lisa was a doctor specializing in emergency medicine. Kate was a civilian pilot with extensive training in hostile environment survival. The early research notes showed Dr. Cathila was impressed by the humans from the start. Even in captivity they maintained what she called remarkable psychological stability. Most alien species, when removed from their normal environment, showed immediate signs of mental breakdown. The humans were different. They adapted quickly to their new surroundings and began cooperating with each other in ways that surprised their captors. Dr. Cathilla wrote extensively about their ability to form strong emotional bonds under stress. Jake found video logs recorded by Dr. Cathilla herself. She was a tall, thin Cytherean with the typical pale blue skin and large dark eyes of her species. In the recordings she spoke in precise scientific language, but Jake could detect growing fascination in her voice. In one log, Dr. Cathilla described how the humans had been separated for individual testing. Each woman had been placed in isolation for 72 hours to measure their psychological response. The results confused the research team. Instead of showing the expected signs of despair and panic, the humans had used the time to rest and plan. When they were reunited, they immediately shared information about their individual experiences. They had turned isolation into reconnaissance. Dr. Cathilla noted that human cooperation seemed to increase rather than decrease under stress. This was the opposite of what happened with most other species. The research team decided to design more challenging scenarios to test the limits of human adaptability. Jake found detailed records of these tests. The humans were subjected to various forms of psychological pressure, including mock executions, simulated torture, and threats against each other. Throughout every scenario they maintained their unity and continued to resist me. Walsh showed particular resilience during technical challenges. The aliens would present her with broken alien equipment and demand she repair it. She would comply, but Jake noticed from the video recordings that she was secretly studying the devices and memorizing their construction. Lisa Brown impressed her captors by treating injuries inflicted during testing. She would care for her fellow prisoners with whatever medical supplies were available, but she was also conducting her own observations of Cytherean biology and physiology. Kate Turner frustrated the aliens by maintaining optimism even in the worst situations. She would tell stories and jokes to keep spirits up, but Jake realized she was also tracking guard schedules and facility routines. The aliens conducting the tests became increasingly aggressive as the humans continued to resist. Dr. Cathilla's notes showed concern about the methods being used, but she continued the research under pressure from her government supervisors. Jake found recordings of heated arguments between Dr. Cathilla and other members of the research team. A Zephyrian scientist named Veltar argued that the tests were becoming unnecessarily cruel. Dr. Cathilla defended the research as necessary for understanding human capabilities. As months passed, the tone of Dr. Cathilla's notes began to change. Her scientific objectivity was being replaced by something else. Jake realized the Cytherean scientist was developing respect for her human subjects. She wrote about their courage and determination with increasing admiration. The humans never stopped planning their escape. Jake found evidence that they had been studying the facility's security systems for weeks. Amy Walsh had identified weaknesses in the electronic locks. Lisa Brown had been gathering information about the guard rotations. Kate Turner had been mapping the layout of the entire complex. Dr. Cathilla's notes showed she was aware of these activities, but she did not report them to her supervisors. Instead, she began documenting human ingenuity and problem-solving abilities. She wrote that humans possessed an almost supernatural ability to find hope in hopeless situations. The research data showed something else that amazed the aliens. The three women's bond had actually grown stronger during their captivity. Instead of turning against each other as expected, they had become like sisters. Their loyalty to each other was absolute. Jake found a particularly interesting log entry where Dr. Cathilla described a conversation she had overheard between the women. Amy Walsh had been given the opportunity to earn better treatment by providing information about her companions. She had refused. Without hesitation, this decision baffled the alien researchers. Most species would have accepted the offer to improve their own situation. The humans instead chose to suffer together, rather than betray each other. Dr. Cathilla wrote that this behavior challenged everything she understood about survival instincts. As Jake continued reading, he realized the research had affected Dr. Cathilla in ways she had not expected. Her notes became less clinical and more personal. She began referring to the humans by their names, rather than as test subjects. The Cytherian scientists started questioning the ethics of the research. She wrote about feeling guilty for participating in what she now understood was torture. Her government supervisors became concerned about her changing attitude. Jake found communications between Dr. Cathilla and her superiors. The Cytherian military wanted more aggressive testing to break the humans' resistance. Dr. Cathilla argued that the current research had already provided valuable data about human psychology. The conflict between Dr. Cathilla and her government reached a crisis point when they ordered her to begin surgical experimentation on the human subjects. She refused and was threatened with court-martial. Her final research notes showed her making a decision that would change everything. Dr. Cathilla had realized that humans represented something unique in the galaxy. Their strength came not from individual superiority, but from their ability to support each other. She wrote that humanity would eventually dominate space not through conquest but through cooperation. Found her last official research log. It was a formal report recommending that the Cytherian government abandon any plans for conflict with humanity. Dr. Cathilla warned that humans were far more dangerous as enemies than anyone realized. Their unity made them essentially undefeatable. The report was rejected, and Dr. Cathilla was ordered to continue her research with more extreme methods. Instead, she chose to help the humans escape. Jake realized that Veltar, the Zephyrian, who had sold him the workshop, had been part of the conspiracy to free the prisoners. Says Jake finished reading the research logs, he felt a mixture of horror and pride. Horror at what had been done to three innocent women, pride at how they had faced their ordeal with such courage. The aliens had tried to break them, but instead had been changed by their tomorrow. Jake would continue searching for evidence of what happened during the escape. He hoped the women had made it to safety, but he feared the worst. The aliens would not have let them go without a fight. Jake spent his third day in the workshop, digging deeper into the classified files. His military-grade translator was working overtime processing the complex scientific data he had found. The more he learned about Amy Walsh, Lisa Brown, and Kate Turner, the more impressed he became with their incredible resilience. The detailed psychological profiles, created by Dr. Cathilla, painted a picture of three extraordinary women who had refused to be broken by their captivity. Each had brought unique skills to their shared struggle for survival, and their combined strengths had created something the aliens could not understand. Or, Amy Walsh had been captured during what should have been a routine rescue mission. The colony ship Meridian had suffered engine failure and sent out a distress signal. Amy was part of the engineering team that kept the ship running while they waited for help. Instead of rescue ships, Cytherian vessels had arrived and taken prisoners. The aliens had been particularly interested in Amy because of her military background and technical expertise. They wanted to understand how human engineers could repair alien technology so quickly. Amy had learned to work with alien systems during her service with the Colonial Defense Force. Dr. Cathilla's notes showed fascination with Amy's ability to adapt to new technology. The Cytherian scientist would present Amy with increasingly complex alien devices, and time, how long it took her to understand their function. Amy never failed to figure out how something worked. What the aliens did not realize was that Amy was doing more than just completing their tests. She was secretly mapping the workshop's entire electrical and computer system. Every time they gave her a device to repair, she learned something new about Cytherian and Zephyrian engineering. Jake found Amy's own notes hidden in the computer system. She had been keeping a detailed journal disguised as routine maintenance logs. Amy had documented every aspect of the facility, from guard schedules to security protocols. She had even identified the best escape routes. Lisa Brown had been the ship's chief medical officer when the Meridian was attacked. She had tried to treat wounded passengers during the Cytherian assault and had been captured while defending the medical bay. Lisa's background made her valuable to the research team. The aliens were amazed by Lisa's medical knowledge and her ability to treat injuries with limited supplies. Dr. Cathilla wrote extensively about Lisa's innovative use of alien medical equipment. Lisa had learned to operate Cytherian surgical tools and had even improved some of their procedures, but Lisa was also conducting her own research on her captors. She had been studying Cytherian and Zephyrian biology, looking for weaknesses that might be useful during an escape attempt. Lisa's medical training gave her insights into alien physiology that proved invaluable. Jake discovered that Lisa had been secretly documenting the effects of various alien technologies on human biology. She had noticed that some Cytherian medical devices caused unexpected reactions in human patients. Lisa used this information to plan countermeasures against alien weapons. Kate Turner had been a passenger on the Meridian, traveling to her new assignment as a test pilot for the colonial government. She had been visiting the ship's observation deck when the attack began. Kate had tried to help other passengers reach the escape pods. The aliens were interested in Kate because of her pilot training and her knowledge of human spacecraft. Kate had flown everything from civilian transports to military fighters. Her experience with different types of propulsion systems made her a valuable source of information. Dorcathila's research notes showed that Kate had an almost supernatural ability to maintain morale under pressure, even during the worst tests. Kate would find ways to encourage Amy and Lisa. She told stories about her flying adventures and made jokes about their alien captors. Kate was also the team's intelligence gatherer. She had an excellent memory for details and could track the movements of individual guards and researchers. Kate created mental maps of the entire facility and identified the locations of important equipment and weapons. 3 women had developed an incredible system of communication that frustrated their captors. They used a combination of hand signals, facial expressions, and coded language that the aliens could not decode. Dr. Cathilla wrote about her amazement at their ability to coordinate without speaking. Jake found video recordings that showed the women's communication system in action. During one test, Amy would signal to Lisa using finger positions that looked random to the alien observers. Lisa would then pass information to Kate using subtle changes in posture that appeared natural. Aliens tried to break their communication by separating the women for longer periods, but this strategy backfired. The women used their time apart to plan, and when they were reunited, they shared information more efficiently than before. Dorcathila's notes revealed growing respect for the human prisoners. She wrote that they displayed a level of cooperation that exceeded anything seen in other species. The Cytherian scientist began to understand that human strength came from their ability to work together. The research team tried increasingly desperate measures to break the women's unity. They offered individual rewards for betraying the others, threatened punishment for the group if one person did not comply, and even staged fake executions to create trauma. Every attempt failed. The women's loyalty to each other was absolute. Amy, Lisa, and Kate had formed a bond that the aliens could not break or understand. They would rather suffer together than accept better treatment at the expense of their friends. Jake found psychological evaluations that showed how the women had actually grown stronger during their captivity. Instead of being worn down by the constant testing, they had adapted and learned. The aliens had expected them to become weaker, but the opposite had happened, Dorcathilla noted. that the humans seemed to draw strength from each other in ways that defied scientific explanation. When one woman was having a difficult day, the others would somehow sense it and provide support there. Emotional connection appeared to have physical benefits. The women had also begun to turn the tests against their captors. They would deliberately fail some challenges, while succeeding at others in patterns that conveyed information. Amy would sabotage certain repairs in specific ways that told Lisa and Kate about security weaknesses. Jake realized that the women had been planning their escape from the very beginning. Every day in captivity had been preparation for their eventual breakout. They had studied their captors, learned the facility layout, and identified the resources they would need. The aliens had thought they were conducting scientific research, but the humans had been conducting reconnaissance. Amy, Lisa, and Kate had turned their prison into a training ground, and their captors into unwitting instructors. Dark Cathilla's final notes about the women showed complete transformation in her thinking. She wrote that humans represented something new in the galaxy, a species that became stronger through cooperation rather than competition. The Cytherian scientist had begun to question everything she believed about survival and evolution. Jake found a personal log where Dr. Cathilla admitted that studying the humans had changed her. She no longer believed that strength came from dominating others. She had learned that true power came from the willingness to sacrifice for others. The research data showed that Amy, Lisa, and Kate had achieved something remarkable. They had maintained their humanity in the face of dehumanizing treatment. They had turned their captivity into an opportunity to demonstrate the best qualities of their species. Jake prepared to search for information about their escape attempt. He felt proud to be human. The three women had shown that humans could not be broken by fear or pain. Their strength came from their connection to each other and their refusal to abandon hope. Tomorrow he would learn how they had used their months of preparation to win their freedom. Jake hoped their story would have a happy ending, but he knew that even if it did not, their courage had already changed at least one alien's understanding of humanity. Jake's fourth day at the workshop revealed the most dramatic part of the story. The escape attempt had been months in the planning, and when it finally happened, it changed everything at the research facility. The detailed security logs and emergency recordings painted a picture of three women who had turned the aliens' own technology against them. The escape began during what appeared to be a routine medical examination. Lisa Brown had been scheduled for her weekly health check, while Amy Walsh and Kate Turner remained in their quarters. The aliens had no idea that this was exactly what the women had been waiting for. Dark Cathilla's personal notes revealed that she had been growing increasingly uncomfortable with the research. The Cytherian government was pressuring her to begin more invasive procedures, including surgical experiments on the human subjects. Dr. Cathilla had been delaying these orders, but time was running out. Jake found a communication from Cytherian High Command, ordering Dr. Cathilla to begin brain surgery on one of the humans within 48 hours. The goal was to study human neural pathways and understand how their emotional connections functioned. The procedure would likely be fatal. This ultimatum forced Dr. Cathilla to make her final decision about the research. She could not bring herself to perform surgery on women she had come to respect. She decided to help them escape and sent a coded message to Veltar, the Zephyrian scientist who had also grown uncomfortable with the project. The women had been waiting for the right opportunity, and Dr. Cathilla's decision gave them the chance they needed. Lisa was taken to the medical bay for her examination, but this time she was ready to implement the escape plan they had been developing. AMI had spent months studying the facility's security system during her repair work. She had identified a vulnerability in the main computer that would allow her to override the locks on all the doors. Amy had also disabled several security cameras by making repairs that looked proper but contained hidden flaws. Kate had mapped every corridor and identified the locations of weapons, storage, and communication equipment. She knew exactly how long it would take to reach each critical area and had planned multiple routes in case their primary path was blocked. The escape began when Lisa overpowered her guard during the medical examination. The guard was a young Cytherian who had become careless around Lisa because she seemed so cooperative. Dr. Cathella later admitted that she had deliberately assigned the least experienced guard to give Lisa her chance. Lisa used a medical laser to disable the guard and took his weapon and communication device. She immediately sent the signal that Amy and Kate had been waiting for. The signal was a simple medical emergency code, but it told them the escape was beginning. Amy was ready and used the device. She had been repairing to access the security system. She had been working on a maintenance computer for weeks and had secretly installed a program that would give her control over the entire facility. The aliens thought she was fixing a simple diagnostic tool within minutes. Amy had unlocked all the doors in the detention area and disabled the internal alarm system. She also activated the emergency lighting, which would confuse the guards and make it harder for them to coordinate their response. The facility's own safety protocols were working. Against the aliens, Kate moved immediately to the weapons storage area. She had identified during her reconnaissance. The aliens had underestimated human physical capabilities and had not secured their weapons as carefully as they should have. Kate was able to acquire energy weapons and body armor for all three women. The facility's security recordings showed the chaos that followed as the aliens realized their prisoners had escaped. The Cytherian and Zephyrian guards had trained for external threats, but they were not prepared for prisoners who understood their technology better than they did. Dr. Cathilla and Veltar used the confusion to help the humans reach the vehicle bay. The two alien scientists had decided that the research had gone too far and that the humans deserved their freedom. Dr. Cathilla disabled additional security measures while Veltar prepared a small spacecraft for the escaping Lisa and Kate moved through the facility like a precision military unit there. Months of observation and planning paid off as they avoided the main groups of guards and reached their objectives. Amy's technical skills, Kate's tactical knowledge, and Lisa's medical training combined perfectly. The aliens managed to corner them twice during the escape, but the women's teamwork allowed them to fight their way out. Jake found security footage that showed the incredible coordination between the three humans. They moved and fought as if they could read each other's minds. During the second firefight, Lisa was hit by an energy weapon and badly wounded. Amy and Kate could have escaped without her, but they refused to leave their friend behind. They carried Lisa with them and continued fighting their way toward the vehicle. Dr. Cathilla met them at the spacecraft and provided emergency medical treatment for Lisa's injuries. The Cytherian doctor had brought supplies and equipment that would keep Lisa alive during their escape. Dr. Cathilla also gave them navigation data for human space. The final battle occurred as the three women tried to reach their escape ship. Kate and Amy held off the pursuing guards while Dr. Cathilla worked to save Lisa's life. The security recordings showed the incredible courage of all five beings as they fought against overwhelming odds. Volter died during this final battle, protecting the humans from a squad of Cytherian soldiers. The brave Zephyrian scientist had sacrificed his life to ensure the women could escape. Jake found his last words in the communication logs, telling the humans to remember that not all aliens were their enemies. Amy and Kate got Lisa aboard the spacecraft and launched. Just as more guards arrived at the vehicle bay, Dr. Cathilla stayed behind to face the consequences of her actions, but not before she transmitted critical data about other research facilities to the escaping ship. The escape craft was damaged during the launch and barely made it away from the planet. Jake found tracking data that showed the women's ship had suffered multiple system failures during their flight to human space. They had to make emergency repairs while being pursued by Cytherian patrol ships. Lisa's condition was critical throughout the escape flight. Amy and Kate used the medical supplies provided by Dr. Cathilla to perform emergency surgery in the cramped spacecraft. Kate had to pilot the ship while Amy worked to save Lisa's life. The pursuit ended when the damaged escape craft crossed into human territory. A Colonial Defense Force patrol responded to their distress signal and provided escort to the nearest medical facility. Lisa was rushed into surgery, while Amy and Kate gave their report to military intelligence. Jake found a final Message from Dr. Cathilla, hidden in the workshop's computer system. The brave Cytherian scientist had recorded her thoughts after the escape. She wrote that helping the humans had been the right choice, and that she hoped their story would prevent future atrocities. Dr. Cathilla had been arrested by her own government and faced execution for treason, but she expressed no regret for her actions. She wrote that the 3 human women had taught her what true courage looked like. Their willingness to risk everything for each other had inspired her to do the same. The escape had succeeded because of careful planning, incredible teamwork, and the help of 2 alien scientists who chose to do what was right. Jake realized that the story was not just about human courage, but about the power of conscience to overcome prejudice and fear. As Jake finished reading about the escape, he felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that the women had gotten away, sadness for Veltar, who had died helping them, and for Dr. Cathilla, who had sacrificed her career, and possibly her life, to do the right thing. Tomorrow Jake would search for information about what happened to the 3 women after their escape. He hoped they had recovered from their ordeal and gone on to live full lives. Their courage had already inspired one human salvage dealer to take action against the people responsible for their suffering. Jake's 5th day at the workshop brought the most important discoveries of all. Hidden deep in the computer system, he found Dr. Cathilla's final gift to humanity, a complete database of every illegal research facility operated by the Cytherian government. The brave scientist had spent her last hours at the workshop copying classified military files and intelligence reports. The data showed that the workshop on Kepler 442b was just one of dozens of secret facilities scattered across the galaxy. The Cytherian government had been conducting illegal experiments on captured humans for over 5 years. Amy, Lisa, and Kate were not the only victims, but they might be the key to saving everyone else. Dr. Cathilla had included detailed files about other research projects. Some facilities were studying human physical capabilities, others focused on psychological warfare and interrogation techniques. The scope of the program was massive and involved hundreds of missing humans. Jake realized that Dr. Cathilla had not just helped 3 women escape, she had handed him the evidence needed to expose the entire conspiracy. The Cytherian scientist had risked everything to ensure that humanity would learn the truth about what was being done to their people. The database included communication logs between different facilities, and Jake was amazed to discover that Amy, Lisa, and Kate's escape had triggered a chain reaction. Their successful breakout had inspired other human prisoners to attempt their own escapes at a facility in the Rigel system. 2 human men had overpowered their guards and seized control of a research station. The prisoners had used lessons learned from Amy's technical expertise to disable alien security systems. The escape had failed, but not before the humans transmitted intelligence about their location on a planet near Vega. 3 human women had staged a coordinated uprising that destroyed an entire research complex. The prisoners had sacrificed their lives to prevent alien scientists from completing experiments on captured children. The facility was a total loss, and several important researchers had died. Jake found evidence that news of these escapes was spreading through the underground networks that connected human colonies. The story of 3 women who refused to be broken had become a symbol of human resistance, and was inspiring others to fight back. Dr. Cathilla's files also revealed what had happened to her after the escapes. Authorities had arrested her immediately and charged her with treason. The evidence against her was overwhelming, since she had made no attempt to hide her role in helping the humans during her trial. Dr. Cathilla had testified about everything she had learned during the research. She told the court that humans represented an evolutionary development that other species needed to respect rather than fear. The Cytherian government had not wanted to hear this message. The trial transcripts showed Dr. Cathilla arguing passionately for the rights of all sentient beings. She had become convinced that cooperation between species was possible, and that the research program was preventing this development. The military judges had not been impressed by her arguments. Dr. Cathilla had been sentenced to death, but Jake found records showing that she had escaped from prison with help from other Cytherian scientists who agreed with her views. A growing number of aliens were beginning to question their government's policies toward humanity. Jake spent hours reading through intelligence reports about the current status of the three women. Amy, Lisa, and Kate had indeed made it safely to human space and had recovered from their ordeal. The Colonial Defense Force had debriefed them extensively and used their information to plan rescue operations. Amy Walsh had been promoted to Major and was now working with a special task force dedicated to locating and freeing human prisoners. Her technical expertise and knowledge of alien systems had made her invaluable in planning rescue missions. Lisa Brown had returned to medical practice, but was now specializing in treating victims of alien experimentation. Her experience as a prisoner had given her unique insights into the psychological and physical effects of prolonged captivity. Kate Turner had become a pilot instructor with the Colonial Defense Force, training other pilots in escape and evasion techniques. Her knowledge of alien facilities and security procedures was being used to prepare rescue teams. The three women had remained close friends and continued to work together on projects related to their shared experience. They had established a foundation to help other victims of alien experimentation and were advocates for stronger protection of human civilians. Jake found a recent communication from Amy Walsh, addressed to whoever might find the workshop records. She had somehow learned that Dr. Cathilla had left evidence behind and wanted to make sure it was used properly. Amy's message thanked Dr. Cathilla and Veltar for their sacrifice and urged whoever found the records to take action. The data could save hundreds of human lives, but only if it reached the right people. Amy provided contact information for Colonial Defense Force intelligence. Jake made his decision immediately. He copied all of Dr. Cathilla's files onto secure storage devices and prepared to contact the authorities. The evidence was too important to keep to himself, and the three women deserved to have their story told. Before leaving the workshop, Jake recorded his own message for future visitors. He explained how he had found the facility and what the records contained. Jake wanted to make sure that Dr. Cathilla's sacrifice would be remembered, along with the courage of the three human women. The Colonial Defense Force responded to Jake's call. Within hours, a military transport arrived at Kepler 44 to be carrying intelligence officers and technical specialists. They immediately began analyzing the workshop and downloading every piece of data. Colonel Mary Parker, who led the investigation team, told Jake that his discovery was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The intelligence about other facilities would allow them to plan coordinated rescue operations across multiple star systems. Within weeks, the Colonial Defense Force launched Operation Freedom Strike using Dr. Cathilla's intelligence to hit 17 research facilities. Simultaneously, the raids rescued over 200 human prisoners and captured valuable evidence about alien government involvement. The success of the operation sent shockwaves through alien governments. Several species that had been considering similar research programs abandoned their plans. The cost of conducting illegal experiments on humans had become too high. Jake received updates about the rescued prisoners through his contacts in the Colonial Defense Force. Many of the victims required extensive medical and psychological treatment, but they were alive and free thanks to Dr. Cathilla's courage and Amy, Lisa, and Kate's inspiring example. 6 months after Jake's discovery, he received a personal message from Amy Walsh herself. She was coming to Kepler 44 to visit the workshop, where she and her friends had been held. Amy wanted to see the place where their nightmare had begun and their legend had been born. When Amy arrived, she was accompanied by Lisa and Kate. It was the first time the three women had returned to the planet since their escape. They spent hours walking through the workshop and reading Dr. Cathilla's notes. Jake watched as the three friends remembered their ordeal and honored the memory of the aliens who had helped them escape. They held a small ceremony for Veltar and recorded a message, thanking Dr. Cathilla, wherever she might Beatty women told Jake that their experience had changed how they viewed the galaxy. They had learned that courage and compassion could be found in any species, and that cooperation was always stronger than conflict before. Leaving Amy, Lisa, and Kate helped Jake convert the workshop into a memorial for all victims of illegal experimentation the facility would serve, as a training center for rescue operations, and a reminder of what could be accomplished when beings chose to help each other. Jake's life had been changed by discovering the workshop. He became an advocate for prisoner rights, and worked closely with the Colonial Defense Force to identify other secret facilities. His technical skills and knowledge of alien technology made him valuable in planning rescue operations. Years later, Jake would look back on his discovery as the most important thing he had ever done. Finding that abandoned workshop had led to the rescue of hundreds of humans, and had helped create new alliances between species that chose cooperation over conflict. The story of Amy Walsh, Lisa Brown, and Kate Turner became required reading at Colonial Defense Force academies. Their example of courage under pressure and loyalty to each other was studied by military officers throughout human space. Cathilla had been right about one thing: humans would inherit the stars not through conquest but through the strength that came from refusing to abandon each other. The three women had proven that human bonds were indeed humanity's greatest weapon in the galaxy.